Ferrari fans are celebrating what looks like a 2026 Masterclass, but the data from the last 3 races just exposed a fatal flaw that turns them into sitting ducks for Miami. The SF-26 appears unbeatable through the technical sectors, and yet it hides a dirty secret. Their MGU-K clips too early on every long straight. At a track like Suzuka, you can survive that kind of deficit. On Miami's 1.28 kilometers back straight, you become a 1,000 horsepower roadblock with nowhere to hide. By over-optimizing for early season points, the Scuderia backed themselves into a corner, building a car for a season that no longer exists. Today, we are looking at the data that Tifosi are choosing to ignore, and why Ferrari's genius step forward is actually the very thing that will embarrass them in Florida. Understanding why Ferrari is walking into a technical ambush starts with the Aero joker they have been holding since the beginning of the 2026 development cycle. Because of the FIA's sliding scale for aerodynamic testing, Ferrari's 4th-place finish in 2025 handed them a precise strategic windfall. Exactly 272 wind tunnel runs and exactly 1,700 CFD simulations per testing period. While the rest of the grid fought for every scrap of data, Maranello ran what amounted to a 24-hour science fair, and they used that surplus to perfect their in-washing floorboards. These are carefully regulated pieces of carbon fiber engineering designed to glue the car to the asphalt through high-speed chicanes. To the casual observer, that looks like an engineering masterclass. Vasseur and his team carried so much confidence in their cornering speeds that they practically invited the competition to stop trying. But here's the thing about Formula One. Having the most toys in the sandbox often breeds a dangerous form of engineering arrogance. The trap comes down to one simple problem. Ferrari spent so much time perfecting their high downforce corner mode setup that they accidentally created an aerodynamic parachute for the straight mode sections. All those intricate floorboards and complex winglets generate what engineers call skin friction drag, a brilliant setup when you are navigating the snakes of Suzuka, but a death sentence on the 3 massive straights of the Miami International Autodrome. And this is where it gets worse. Mercedes, forced to be lean and efficient with a more limited tunnel allocation, ended up with a cleaner, more slippery package. Ferrari's abundance led to overcomplication. They built a car that runs draggy by design, banking on pulling enough gap in the corners to survive the straights. Miami's layout does not care about your wind tunnel hours. Raw, slippery top speed is all that matters there. By the time Leclerc hits that 1.28 kilometers back stretch, the Aero joker will not feel like an advantage. It will feel like dragging a lead anchor through the Florida humidity. The 2026 power unit splits its output between 2 systems. The internal combustion engine produces around 400 kilowatts, and the electric MGU-K has been boosted to 350 kilowatts, approximately 470 horsepower on its own. At peak, these 2 systems combine for over 1,000 horsepower. The catch is that you cannot use that electric power all the time. On a 1.28 kilometers straight like Miami's back section, you hit a phenomenon called clipping, the moment the battery depletes or the energy deployment limit is reached and the electric motor suddenly shuts off. Imagine driving a supercar and having 40% of your horsepower vanish midway down a straight. That is exactly what the SF-26 faces in Miami. Early in the season, Ferrari looked competitive because their power unit delivered smooth, reliable output. The telemetry tells a different story. Ferrari has been running a conservative deployment map, short-shifting the electric boost to protect the battery's state of charge. In Miami, conservative will not cut it. Because of the draggy floor we just discussed, the Ferrari engine has to work harder to push through the air, which drains the battery faster. Mercedes, by contrast, has developed super clipping strategies that harvest energy at up to 250 kilowatts while still at full throttle on shorter sections, saving the big boost for the long straights. Ferrari's mapping looks rigid next to that approach. At Suzuka, both Ferrari drivers acknowledged the deficit publicly after the SF-26 registered the lowest top speed of all power unit manufacturers in qualifying, losing around 12 kilometers per hour at the very end of the straights compared to Mercedes. Losing 12 kilometers per hour on a 1.28 kilometers straight does not just cost you time. It makes you vulnerable to every car running active Aero behind you. Ferrari's engine might be the most reliable on the grid, but in the Florida heat, that reliability comes at the cost of being a sitting duck. Miami gets truly dangerous for Ferrari beyond simple battery depletion, and it connects directly to how the 2026 active Aero system operates. The system, officially called straight mode and corner mode, works on both the front and rear wings simultaneously. In corner mode, all flaps sit at maximum angle of attack for peak downforce. In straight mode, those flaps rotate to lower angles and drag drops dramatically. The critical difference from the old DRS system is this: both the attacker and the defender can open their wings at the same moment, which means the aerodynamic advantage cancels itself out entirely. The actual overtaking tool is a separate overtake mode, activated only when a driver sits within 1 second of the car ahead. In overtake mode, the MGU-K maintains full 350 kilowatt output until 337 kilometers per hour instead of tapering from 290. That makes it a power advantage, not an aerodynamic one. 3 distinct straights at Miami demand full deployment every single lap, and this is where Mercedes pulls ahead. They have shown they can recharge aggressively through corners while keeping the wings closed, arriving at braking zones with more energy in reserve. Ferrari's current strategy leans on lift and coast, which costs them twice over. It sacrifices straight-line speed and triggers the wings to close into corner mode, adding drag at precisely the moment the car needs to be slippery. Miami does not forgive that trade-off. Now we need to look at the mechanical side. For 2026, Ferrari switched to a full pushrod suspension layout at both ends, moving away from the pull rod rear they used in 2025. On a smooth, purpose-built track, that change makes sense because it allows better airflow to those in-washing floorboards. Miami is not a purpose-built track. It is a semi-permanent circuit built over a parking lot, and the highway ramp section between turns 13 and 16 is where the real mechanical challenge leaves. Making the 2026 active Aero work effectively requires the car to run very low to the ground, and that creates the conflict. Ferrari's pushrod setup struggles to absorb the crest between turns 14 and 15, where the circuit rises over the Florida Turnpike ramp. When the floor loses its seal over that crest, downforce vanishes for a split second, the tires scrub, and the driver loses confidence at exactly the moment they are building speed toward the back straight. If Leclerc and Hamilton have to raise the ride height just to survive those bumps, they lose the very aerodynamic advantage they spent all their wind tunnel hours building. Everything Ferrari optimized for in the early season works against them the moment the surface gets rough. Miami presents a unique physical challenge for the 2026 power unit because of the shift to 100% sustainable fuel. These fuels carry lower energy density than the fossil-based fuel used until 2025, which means thermal loads through the power unit differ from everything the team's simulation data was built on. Ferrari's Aero package runs incredibly tight, with the engine cover shrink wrapped to minimize drag. In the predicted 32 degrees Celsius Florida heat, that tight packaging becomes a furnace. Keeping the MGU-K and the new battery cells from overheating will likely force Ferrari to open cooling louvers on the side pods, and every vent they open degrades the airflow feeding their in-washing floorboards. To keep the car from overheating, they have to destroy the aerodynamic efficiency that makes them fast. Mercedes engineered thermal resilience into their cooling layout from day one, which means Ferrari now faces a choice between engine longevity and podium pace. The question worth asking is whether this was really a masterclass, or whether Ferrari simply built a car that performed too perfectly on the cool, smooth tracks of the early season. The data says Ferrari is walking into an ambush, but the history of the Scuderia says they might just have one more technical trick up their sleeve for Florida. I have shown you the telemetry and the Aero maps, and now I want your verdict. Tell me if Ferrari is actually playing a long game we have not seen yet, or if the SF26 is about to be exposed as a one-trick pony in Miami. Drop your technical takes in the comments, because I will be jumping in to discuss the best ones. If you want to stay ahead of the 2026 development war, make sure you are subscribed. We are tracking the data all the way to the finish line. I will see you in the next one.